The second book of Rayoneck, chapter 1. I say unto you that because of the things we had learned from these lost books and records, many amongst us were desirous to find one that also taught this lost record, and they believed that they should go and search for more lost truths and return them to us. Now, there were one of our number, a man by the name of Videnek, who was once a great sailor amongst our people, and he is descended from that Wiseneck who was a part of the great expedition to the east. That same Wiseneck who was a great and mighty explorer of the seas. That same Wiseneck who stood before the unrighteous brothers spoken of by my father. Now Videnek came unto me and asked that he be able to take with him 2 or 3 men of our people and journey to the West Sea that we called Tondam, to see if there were any way that we could find a ship and cross the great water of Tondam. Now it was the will of some of the people that this should be done, for they were desirous to cross the great sea Tondam, that they might see the great and renowned prophet Araneck, for many believed that he taught the lost doctrine of the third element. But I make it known unto you, who read this record, that I have seen and read all the records that Araneck had written, and I do not recall he ever spoke of the third element. But rather I believe that my people who were with me now are a lost and lonely people, and they want to taste of the past and their old lives, and I suppose that they wanted to find anything that might bring them closer to their past and the joy they felt from it. I stood before my people, and I made it known unto them that this was our land, given unto us by God, and that we should remain here for the benefit of future generations. But the people were tired of hiding and running and being afraid for their lives. For many of them had children, and they wished that their children might be free, just as they once had been free, free to live, free to walk and talk without the threat of death and violence, free to play in the sun and lie upon the grass or the hillside, free to chase the clouds and feel the sun upon their face rather than hide from the sun and only exist in the night and the shadows. Now my people were desirous to find the truth and about the third element, so that their children might once again be free and might gain a greater understanding of Almighty God. So it was that I gave way to my people's request, and Videnek, accompanied by 2 others, started his journey westward, and it was in the season of the great cold, when the snow was still thick upon the ground, and had not yet broken. I record here that Videnek and his companions were gone for many seasons, and did not return unto us until the flowers were in bloom, and the trees were green again, and it was at this time that Videnek returned to us. He was gone for such a long time that many amongst us did fear that he had been killed, and some amongst us even speculated that he might have been devoured by the seed of Rayoneck. And many times they did pray unto the heavens that he might be preserved, and so it was that many, many prayers ascended into heaven on behalf of brave Videnek and his brave companions. Now I suppose it was because of these prayers that Videnek returned unto us, but he returned unto us with only one of his companions. For behold, Zaniah had fallen ill returning to us, and died. When Videnek returned unto us, I gave him permission to address the people, after hearing myself from Videnek in private council, and it was my desire that all the people should hear what I had heard. Videnek stood before the people and told them of his great journey, and how upon his great journey he had come across an abandoned sea town. And Videnek spoke about how he and his companions had explored the abandoned town and harbor for the town that had been deserted for many years. As Videnek spoke of how, whilst they were exploring the town and the harbor, they saw approaching across the greatness of the western sea a small vessel, much like the one made by our ancient peoples. And Videnek spoke of how he and his companions watched the vessel approaching the harbor, and Videnek was shocked to see a man like unto himself at the control of the vessel. Now Videneck said that the vessel made land and was moored up in the harbor, and the man at the controls of the ship stepped onto dry ground. Behold, I make this known unto you that Videneck spoke of many things concerning this situation, but the most important thing to come out of his tale was the identity of the man. For Videneck declared and testified that the man was no less than the prophet Araneck himself, and that he had come to deliver those who wished to be delivered and take them across the Western Sea to a nation that Araneck referred to as the Confederation that he himself had established upon the land far away upon the Western Sea. Upon hearing this and all of Videneck's testimony, some of the people amongst us were desirous to make their way to the port of Kinderon and to the place where Videneck testified the great prophet Araneck awaited them. Now the people were overcome with great joy and happiness, and many of them sang and danced and gave thanks unto Almighty God for sending Araneck to us, for they and I knew that he had been sent to save some of us, and that it was his will that they make their way westward across the sea Tandem, and the prophet Araneck had indeed come to offer salvation to those that wished it. Chapter 2. Now, when the people had made preparation, the following morning we began to make our journey to the West Sea, into the port of Kinderon. And I declare that the journey was a hard one, and it took many days and nights, too many to be recalled, to our destination, that we were under constant threat for our lives, lest we be caught by slavers or put to death. So we slept when we could and traveled when we could, and it was a tiresome journey. But I love my people. I love their courage, their determination, their strength, and their heart. For not one amongst us murmured, for all amongst us bore the trial with great patience, for they had finally given themselves to God, and God in his mighty and ultimate wisdom blessed us with a portion of his Holy Spirit. And I supposed it was that Spirit that emboldened the hearts of the people and made them bear the heavy burden with true faithfulness. And so it was that upon the season of a new birth, when the sun shone again, shows himself and makes all things grow, we came to the port of Kinderon. The port of Kinderon was likened to a great city that was without people, for it was deserted and silent, and it seemed that the ships were alone, like abandoned people without friends, much like my own people, and alone they stood waiting, and it seemed that the Almighty had preserved this port and its ships for my people. Now when we approached the port, we beheld a pillar of smoke rising high above the masts of the ships, and Videneck led us forth, knowing as he did that the smoke was from the fire of Araneck. And as Videneck led us forth down into the port and through the deserted streets that stood quiet and empty until we came upon a lone, solitary man. The man was standing on the floor tending to a meal when we came upon him, but as soon as he beheld our coming, he rose to his feet and came towards us, beckoning us to sit and partake of his meal with him. For my people were tired and hungry, and because of their tired souls and hungry bodies, they needed no further invitation, and so they sat and began to partake of the food before them. And as my people partook, I stood watching and did not join them, for I was not concerned with food, although my body was hungry. I was concerned with why Araneck was here at all, and why he had chosen to return to us now, and I was concerned that his pillar of fire and smoke may be seen by our enemy. Behold, I make it known unto you that Araneck knew all that I was thinking, and he left the company of my people and came to talk with me. Now Araneck was indeed a great man, and here he was in front of me, Araneck the great, Araneck the missionary, Araneck the prophet, Araneck the explorer, Araneck the immortal. For all of these titles were his, but why had he come to us now? My mind swam. I felt emotions conflicting with one another. First I was glad, then I was angry. Could not this great man have come sooner? Why was he here? Now Araneck was a great man, and what he had to tell me would change and affect my own life, even so much that my own life and existence and reason for being would change forever. Now I relate to you the things that took place between Araneck and me, and what follows is an account of the conversation which took place between us and events surrounding it. Chapter 3. Araneck stood before me and said, "Why are you not dining with us, my son? Do you not favor roast duck? Is it not pleasing to your taste? Should I have not covered it in berries?" "It isn't anything to do with the duck," I replied. "I am sure it is lovely to taste, but I am more concerned with why you are here at all." And Araneck replied, "Now, my son, what do you think I am doing here?" And I said, "I don't think it is to cook a meal of duck for us, is it? No, I think you have come to take some of us away from death to life." "You fear that too much?" Araneck replied. "If I fear life, it is because I have justification to. What would the great Araneck know of our troubles? You have not lived through the trials of blood as we have." Just as I was going to continue speaking, Araneck raised his hand and stopped me. "You suppose too much, my friend. I have suffered even as you have suffered, for I sense that you are angry because I am free and you are not. For I now think it is time to stop hiding and become as your father was before you. You must no longer hide. You must learn to use the gift of the priesthood as our people once did." I was somewhat surprised by what Araneck said, and a million thoughts ran around in my head. Question upon question danced upon my tongue. Questions like, "Do you know the third element? Is your confederation built upon it? Is the third element why you have come here?" Upon hearing these questions and these words, Araneck again spoke, saying, "No, my son, I have come here to help you, to teach you, to command you that the time for hiding is over. And if some of your people wish to live in the daylight free, then they are indeed free to join me of their own free will. But my greater purpose for being here is to teach and educate you. Now come and join me in eating this fine duck, for I cannot tell you the trouble I had in catching it, let alone cooking it. So come and eat with me and your people. Questions and teachings can wait till later." So I joined my people in a fine meal, and after eating much and making merry, my people and I sat and exchanged stories of our lives and our trials. And we sat and heard Araneck tell the story of his life and his trials, and it was indeed a story for the ages, full of excitement, danger, love, and faith. We sat as he told of the people across the western sea, how they lived, how they worshipped, how they warred one against the other until they were all wiped out, much like my own people. And we listened and heard about how the bones of these people covered large parts of their lands. We heard how Araneck stood advisor and teacher to many kings, kings with strange names such as Kish, Kam, Arabid, Shalash, and I remember how strange these names sounded unto me, for there was no neck again amongst them. I listened and learned how Araneck went amongst people and tried to call them to repentance, and he told us how a few returned to God, and of a record that was kept by a holy man called Ether, a prophet. And although he had not the priesthood, he walked and talked with God, and we heard how their record would come forth, that it would come forth through a new people that live now upon the land across the sea. Wow. Are they talking about the Americas? And Araneck was there during the time of Ether? Araneck told how he now lives among them, for this new people had come across the sea and brought with them the teachings of God. And Araneck taught us how he had learned to listen from them and to teach and to administer, and how he had set up amongst them a confederation of faith, and how this confederation was to be his lasting legacy among them, and how it would become the basis of future governments upon the western land across the sea. We all listened with great intent, well into the darkness of the night, until only I remained awake with the prophet, and I looked at the prophet through the fire, my eyes into his eyes. I looked at him, and he looked at me. I knew deep down that I was now in his hands, and my whole life was going to change. I'm just going to make another comment that I've read this many times and never caught that this could possibly be the Book of Mormon time. And I am also happen to have a close affiliation with Chief Mitiga at the moment, who teaches that their way of government was taught to the white people when they came here, and that it was used as the foundation. Um, the form of government that was taught by the Indians was used as the foundation of the uh, United States. So I don't know. I haven't read it. I don't have proof, but I just thought I'd input that here because I find it interesting. Araneck looked back at me and spoke. Your father was of the elect. You now must do as I teach, or else all is lost. But before we start, let us sleep. The night is fast upon us, and time was waning. Much is to be decided upon concerning a number of your people in the morning, and of course, much is to be taught. Sleep now, my young student. You will need all your strength in the days to come. And so I slept. I slept as a babe for the first time in a long time, and I knew on the morrow my life would begin anew, knowing all there was to know concerning my calling and my priesthood. Wow, they've been running for years, and they finally get a good night's sleep. It's awesome. Chapter 4. Now it seemed to me that the morning came fast, and I must have overslept, because when I finally awoke the next morning, I found my people were already up and busy. Some were talking one with another, some were packing and gathering their belongings, some were walking and exploring the port. But amidst all this business, Araneck sat watching my people, and on occasion looking at me. I rose from my bed and looked toward Araneck's ship, and then saw that many of my people had gathered near unto the ship that Araneck had tied to the harbor. All in all, I counted 120 of my people who were gathered and who had decided to make the journey across the sea. Seeing this, I walked toward them, and I stood before them and spoke. Are you all in agreement? Do all of you gathered here wish to go across the sea, tandem to the western lands? Will I pray you tell me what I must do to stop this happening? You know as I that we need to stay together. Please let me help you. It was a hard moment I shall never forget. It was a moment, albeit in a small moment, that still in some ways haunts my mind and soul. Even now, after all these years, having lived longer than I know, that parting haunts me deeply. However, the people were determined to go, so much so that they begged and pleaded to go. So it was at this time that Rayoneck stood before me and spoke, saying, My prophet, holy and blessed are thee. Be not afraid for us, for we are not afraid, but we wish to be free, and for this reason we shall take our journey upon the ship of Araneck, so that our children will always be free. Oh, my dear friend, we love you as we loved your father, but the times are hard, and we can see no end to the darkness. At least this way we can enjoy the light again and look forward without darkness at our backs. Let us go, my friend, and be glad in your heart, and bid us good journey as we bid good journey upon you, our prophet and friend. I stood for a moment. I could not let myself let them go, but in my heart I knew it was what they wanted, and who was I to stand in their way? Who was I? I was their friend, true. I was not their gaoler, and I could and would not condemn them to live a life they did not want to live. And so it was on the morning of the 18th day of the 13th month, my people were parted from one another, and I, along with many of my people that did not leave, watched as our families and friends boarded Araneck's ship. Thinking of it now, many moons later, I cry, for never again were we to meet, and that pain still lives within my heart. Now Araneck, who had been watching us as this sad event transpired, came along the boat once. They were all aboard and stood before them and spoke, saying, I shall not be journeying with you, my friends. My journey lies along a different path, but Rayoneck knows the course you shall take. Be of good cheer, for when you arrive at the land westwards, my people shall meet you, and you shall dwell in peace and happiness all your days, and you shall indeed be free and at peace. Now I bid good journey to all of you. Rayoneck, steer them on home. Now the people had complete faith in the words of Araneck and in the skill of Rayoneck in the sailing of the ship, and so they departed, singing as they went with broken hearts and voices. Good journey, my soul. Good journey, my soul. Hallelujah to God, for he is the keeper of my soul. Good journey, my soul. And so they were gone, but it must be made known that there were also many that did not take the journey across the seas, for they decided they would stay with me, their prophet, and although many left, as our number still remains large enough so that we might defend ourselves if necessary. Now behold, I stayed behind. It became necessary that I anoint another amongst those that left to act in the ways of the priesthood and serve as a prophet amongst them. So I called forth one called Araneck, who had been with me since the time of my father, he having learned all he could from me while we traveled in the wilderness of our land. So Araneck and I anointed Araneck, and the circle was complete. And because Araneck knew my limited knowledge of all things pertaining to the priesthood, he laid hands with me upon Araneck, so that the anointing could be sealed by God. And I gave unto Araneck the device that was given to me by the people of Limpton, that was to help us on our journeys, so that we might not become lost. And this device I called a Frophanash. It says in parentheses, round object 3 inches deep, translucent, clear covering, and 2 red buttons. When you look into this, it tells you where to go. This was my parting gift, so that my people would be safe upon the waters and the land of their new home. Now I cannot lie, for there were many tears shed that day, and many voices crying, and many of the people labored to board the ship, and as they finally faded out of view, my heart was heavy with a great sadness, and I knew then, as surely as I know now, how my father must have felt when we bid farewell to each other for the last time. So it was that I stood at the sea's port and watched the ship as it gently faded away across the curvature of the sea, and I stood for the space of many hours, and I stood with those who remained with me until the sun hid itself from our faces. And my heart was heavy, and I testified that it was the heaviest I have felt it. And still today, as I sit here writing this record, even after all I have learned and done, I look back upon that day as my biggest failure. And now we were alone once more, but this time we had one added to our number. Araneck was with us, and he was there to train me, to help me fulfill the measure of my creation and my calling as a prophet. And so he did, or else I would not be here writing this down. Now I recount that training, or as much as I can, to fill these pages without excluding other things. Behold, he taught me. All he taught me was amazing, and I thank him even today for what he did and for helping me realize who I was. All right, we got chapter 5. Now behold, our number was now 101, and thus we were alone upon the land. Now we were few, and we are alone, and because of this we wondered where to go from the port, and how to live. And so it was that the remaining people with me sought my counsel, as they had always done, and they stood wondering about where to go, and if our lot was to wander to and fro upon the land again. But this time was different, because of Araneck. Now Araneck stood with me in counsel and spoke, saying, "Why do you wander? Do you not know of Shalendrin in the land of Ridnan?" Behold, we looked back and forth one to another, for we had truly never heard of such a place, and Araneck shook his head and spoke. "Shalendin is the place we shall journey to, and this shall be your new home. From that place you will learn, and your people will be free. Be not angered with your prophet for having no knowledge of this place. He is of God, but he received no knowledge of this place while in his youth. But I am here to help him and teach him, so that he might be like unto the prophets of old. Now Shalendon is the secret and sacred place, and I know that Rayoneck would not have told of this place, so do not judge him too harshly, because when I am gone, he alone will be left to lead you. So mark all well. This is a man anointed by God. Shall you all be like your fathers of old and reject your God and his servants? I think not. Now gather together, for today we journey to Shalendon and freedom." And so my people and I started our journey from the port of Kinderon and back into the heartland of our people, even the land of Ridnon. All the while upon our journey, my people bore the travel with lightheartedness and with eager strides to their steps. Looking back now, I find myself feeling pride in their character, for that pride and that love has never wavered from my heart, even for those that sailed away across the westward sea. No, I love them all. Now we found ourselves sooner rather than later within the borders of our sacred land, and knowing that the seed of Rayoneck tarried not upon the land out of fear of their own making, we were not burdened with fear of being discovered, although the thought was never far from our minds. Araneck knew of this fear. Although it was small, it was always there and was always a burden, and it governed what we did and how we lived. So he led us forward into a sacred place, a place lost into the world and protected by God, a place that was not seen by the eye of man, a place that was known unto the Lord alone. Now Shalendon was the place of our journey. To this place was well worth the effort. As we approached its borders, we could see nothing different to our eyes, and many of my people doubted it existed at all. And Araneck sensed this doubt amongst the people, and so he stood and raised his hands into the air, turned his face away from the people and toward the forest that we saw ahead, and said, "Shalom, Everlon, Shalom, O Roshmar." Upon this, a bright light emanated from the forest, and a doorway was opened before our eyes, and my people fell to their knees, knowing that God had indeed delivered them. My people and we brought ourselves to our feet again and walked through the great doorway, and a great and beautiful land lay before us, a land full of wonders. Behold, Araneck led us forth into Shalendon, who, oh, what a place for us! For as soon as we entered all its borders, the doorway was shut behind us, and at last we were truly hidden from the world. I say unto you that Shalendon is such a wonder. It has been my home longer than any other place. Here there is no sickness, no death, and no hunger. We have all we could possibly ask for and more. It is a place of God. I write this record from within its sanctuary. From here, I learned what it meant to be a prophet of God. From here, we grew and continue to grow, reaching out all the time to those who would listen, and we stand to help those who need our help. Chapter 6. Behold, once we had entered the sanctuary, my people and I stood in amazement, looking round, as not truly believing what lay before us. The greenness of the grass, the fullness of the trees, the beauty of the flowers, and the cleanness of the rolling waters. Above us in the air flew birds of all colors, shapes, and sizes, and the land teemed with life. The mighty stag, the humble deer, the great bear, and the cunning fox, all were there. We all stood in wonder and amazement. Behold, Araneck stood before my people and spoke. Please put away your weapons. You will not need them here, for you are free. Follow me beyond the rise, and I will lead you to your new homes. Without resistance, our weapons were put away. No more would we need them. Only when leaving the sanctuary of Chelendon would we need them again. And as instructed, we followed Araneck over the greenest hills, beside the purest waters, until before our eyes lay a beautiful, glorious, great house. The great house was made of oak, the grandfather tree, the tree given the name to remember God, a tree that always gives, nothing wavering, whose seed contains the blood of God. The oak house was carved as if truly by the gods, for it was wonderful and beautiful to behold, the workmanship being exceedingly fine and excellent. What craftsman had done this work? For it was not done by human hands, for there was nothing out of place, and all stood in perfection. We walked through the great doors, and inside we found fires burning bright that gave off scents of cinnamon and cloves, and filled our heads and hearts with much love. And inside my people found furs of the softest kind, great tables of the most beautiful workmanship, and beautiful chairs, and all manner of things were made for us inside the great house, and rooms were made for each and every one of us. Araneck helped us settle and to unpack, and after stood before us and spoke. My brothers and sisters, here is the great house made by the will of God, and all this he has done for you by his love and mercy for you. Here the fire will always burn, never losing their luster, and smell here the food will always be sent unto you, so that you will never know hunger. Here is Chelendon. You are free to roam. You are free to explore the lands given unto you by God. Here you will learn to grow in spirit, free to expand your knowledge and understanding of God and your own selves. From here you will be called to serve the seed of Rayoneck, inasmuch as you will once again bring them to a knowledge of God. My brothers and sisters, you are safe here. Be at peace. Indeed, Chelendon was all it was and more, and now still I live here in this sanctuary, never having to worry about a thing. For all is given unto us by the servants of God, who come down to us from above and teach and aid us in all things. We are here to serve God, and in return he looks after us as any father would look after his children. Now I say unto you that my people made a home of Chelendon, and we have explored the land, and we have walked and talked with one another, and we have peace. For Chelendon is as close to heaven as any place can be upon this world, and we thank God and his angels every day for this place. Isn't it interesting that God provides this after their humbling, after their trials, after everything they've gone through for years, of fighting and traveling at night and scavenging, that the Lord provides everything. And I think that's a big lesson for us, that the Lord will provide and does. May not be in a sanctuary like this that seems like the story of fairy tales, you know. But I think faith that these kind of places exist can help us during our hard times. Anyways, chapter 7. Now that my people were settled, it came time for Araneck to teach me and instruct me in the ways of the priesthood, and this he did, and much was learned from him, some of which I will share with you. Now behold, Araneck is a wise man, and what he had to say has stayed with me unto this day. This is one of my favorite chapters. I recall this one day amongst many when Araneck took me into the great meadow. But I make it known that Araneck had instructed me much before this moment, and I had learned much but what passed between us that day stands out foremost in my mind. We walked a little till we came to a small clearing. We stopped, and Araneck stood before me and held out his hand. In his hand was a small acorn, the seed of the great oak. "What do you see?" Araneck said, holding out his hand. I told him I saw an acorn, that it was the seed of the great oak, and given time and much care, it would grow into a mighty tree that symbolizes our God and all of creation. Araneck once again looked at the seed and spoke. "Can you not see beyond this mere seed? Use the priesthood and see what else you can see." I looked and looked harder, and then I saw it. I saw the spirit within the acorn, that it was alive, and that it too had a purpose and meaning of its own to fulfill. I saw it stand before God and give an account of itself before him at judgment. I saw the spirit of this mighty oak kneel before its creator and give thanks for its creation. I explained this all to Araneck, and a warm smile covered his face, for he knew that I knew that I had seen beyond just the seed, that I had seen its true nature. How important it is for us to know that everything here that God created, he has created for a wise purpose, that we are to learn what purpose that is while we are here in our mortal probation. Araneck then asked me to take the seed and deposit it in the ground, and with the priesthood, make it grow. This was the last of my lessons, some of which I have not included in this record to save space and time. But this lesson was the most difficult I had yet faced, and so I have included it in this record so that you might see what I was taught. In my mind, I thought, how was I to make this grow? It's a small seed that takes years to grow into a mighty oak. At first I struggled, but Araneck was there to urge me on. Use your priesthood to understand the spirit within. He urged me on. I began to feel a surge of power rise through my body to my hands. I looked and I saw something protruding from the acorn. It was the first signs of growth. How was this possible? I kept saying to myself, how? Why? Then it stopped growing, and I pulled away. Have you learned nothing of what I have taught you these many days? I looked at him and back at the seed. I recall as I write this that I was overcome with frustration, and I remember slamming myself down upon the ground and shouting out, "Master Araneck, I can do all the things you have taught me, but this is impossible. You are asking me to grow a tree that takes years and years to grow, a tree that soaks in the sun and digs its roots deep beneath the earth. How then do you expect me to grow in a minute that which takes many lifetimes to grow? I tell you, it cannot be done." Chapter 8. This one has a... Araneck teaches Rayoneck of the life-giving power of priesthood and the necessity of faith. Then Araneck spoke, saying, "O my son, I have seen men move mountains. I have seen men make the lame walk and the blind see. I have seen men make lakes where there was once dry ground. Do not tell me it cannot be done, for I know it can be done." I remember thinking I just could not see how it could be done. Araneck knew this. "Look at me, boy," raising his fingers, pointing to my shoulder. "The priesthood is within me, and it is my friend. It is powerful beyond anything else in existence. Its greater life makes things grow, sets the planets in their place, moves the earth in its orbit. Its power is eternal, and it is within us. You and I are immortal beings. We shall live forever in the grace of God our Father and his Son, who is Jesus the Christ. Because of him, you are a perfect creation. Remember, you are created of that Father that gave life to all things. Now try again, my son." With his words still ringing in my ears and my soul, I once again called upon the Lord of Lords to aid me. I remember seeing in my mind's eye the small seed coming to life, and so it was in reality. I saw this small seed grow from a small sapling upwards and outwards, branches springing forth from the mighty trunk being set in its place. What a mighty, beautiful thing it was! The leaves it formed were the greenest of leaves. It was perfect in its creation, nothing out of place. It was whole and beautiful, and the shadow it cast made the most perfect shade. It was at this point that I knew that the power and authority of God was the holy priesthood. And I held it, and my father held it, and his father, and so on, back to the beginning of time. And it was the greatest of all powers in the known universe. And I was one blessed to own such power. And through that power, I have indeed brought forth life. Araneck and I stood under the large oak, its canopy shading us from the sun. Araneck stood with me, and I stood with him. We spoke of many things, some of which I will record here. But for now, Araneck's work with me was done. We spent many days together, and I was taught much. I was now the prophet of God, or the prophet of God had always intended me to be. And now it was my duty to share that gift with all that would listen, for it is the duty of God, who possessed the priesthood, to share it with all the world. It should not be kept a secret or hidden from view, but it should be set forth to shine a light unto the darkest of places. So that would be my mission, and I would engage in it all my life. Now after Araneck had spoken for what seemed an age, he stood, and I with him, and we embraced one another. I shall be leaving you now, he said. You have learned all that I have to share. Indeed, all that I have been commanded to share. You are indeed blessed to stand as a prophet unto this land. I shall continue to travel, to teach, and to learn, for there are many places in this world that I can still teach, and where I can still learn. I will journey back across the western seas unto my confederation and beyond, for we are not alone in our love of God, and I shall continue until I see before my own eyes the babe in the cradle, that is my God, and I shall lay at his feet the purest gold from the mountains of Zion, and this shall be my gift unto God. And whether I go after this has been done is in the hands of the Father. Now, my friend, good journey be upon you and all your people. Remember what I have taught you. Through you, all that I see and hear, your power shall know it is of God. I walked with Araneck to the borders of Shalendon. We took hand in hand one last time, the way in which we had been taught in the holy temple. And then he slipped through the veil that protected us, and I saw him no more. I tell you now, and bear witness to the fact, that the man was and is a mighty man. His spirit is one with God, and wherever he is today, I thank him for what he taught me. For Araneck truly made me a man of God.